I can do it.
Yeah, because I emailed Mike on Friday, Monday, texted him today, and called him today. Got nothing on any of them.
I know that because I've tried. I'm trying to.
But I think that's belt, suspenders, belt, and suspenders. So if you don't mind, Bob, just we got to make sure that Simone's ready to kick off the meeting. Yeah, well, yeah. We're ready? Okay, Bob?
All right, so I will call the meeting to order. I'm the acting chairman, and we have a quorum in that I and Bill Wazika and I are both here. That's 2 out of 3 members. And just a personal comment before we go further into this. I was in church Sunday, and they congratulated Dennis Riley on his 93rd birthday. And so, happy birthday to your father.
I hope I got the good gene.
And many more.
93.
93 and many more, right?
The first item on the agenda is the financial audit update.
Laura, can
So our fiscal 23 financial audit has been completed. We have our audited financial reports, and our auditor, partner, will be at the February board meeting to present and summarize the findings. It will be distributed in audit then. And if you have any questions, we'll be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Is it still the same audit?
The same firm, it's CLA, is the same firm, and our managing partner is different this year. So I think you guys have met Ron Nossick in the past. We have a new partner, and that's Dave. Dave Flint. So this will be his first time meeting the NP board and presenting.
Good.
Yeah.
And then they do it at that too.
Yes, they do.
And CMEC and the city.
And one of the partners who doesn't work directly on these accounts went to the senior prom with my son. So I can't think of her name. In any instance. All right, well, that's basically it's coming up, so we can move on to the next agenda item, I presume. And that would be the budget presentation. And the first item is the gas budget drivers.
Okay. Mary's going to lead the conversation here, and feel free to ask questions about anything in the gas division as well as the budget items. Mary?
Okay, well, thank you for the time. I'm Barry Olson, the gas integrity manager, as you know. I'm responsible for 4 divisions here at FPU, the gas underground with 14 full-time employees, field services with 7, gas measurement and control as our mechanics, take care of our stations, 3 employees, and engineering, training, and compliance with 2 full-time employees. Nothing new. What we do each and every day is maintain, operate 155 miles of gas mains, about 7,400 services, have a park of 5 gate stations, 9 DR stations, regulator. We have our LNG satellite facility up in the industrial park and 2 CNG fueling stations. For fiscal year 25, the O&M side, the budget request is about $3.2 million. The drivers, again, nothing real new here on the front part of this slide. Mains and services repairs, customer meter inspections and repairs, outside contractor services, training and operator qualification. Of course, that's always present in gas and seems to get more stringent each and every year. Our gate or DR station, O&M, LNG, CNG, all the things that we maintain on a daily basis go into that. New budget drivers and things that are resulting in increases. Number 1, we have new pure gas regulation on the verge of approval. There's 108 new regulations. I'm going to hit upon some of them in the next slide. But obviously, with those regulations comes increasing costs. And we hire a lot of contractors to do things here to keep our headcount, I think, manageable. And those contractor prices, they're going up. Inflation over the last couple of years is pretty bad. The prices that we pay our contractors reflect that. This protection consultant, odorizer maintenance, materials testing and engineering. So, it adds up, when you look at it all in one place, those costs that only continue to go up. So the 108 new regulations. So where we're at is the regulations have been formally introduced, reviewed by the legislature and applicable state legal departments. The regulations have been revised based on initial comments received by the various interested parties. And now are expected to pass, I'm saying 6 months, that's probably conservative, I would expect probably in 2 or 3. And examples of what these regulations mean for us. Pretty significant update of our procedures, enhanced quality control, quality assurance programs, increased inspections of our PF pipeline facilities. It's going to require a backup electrical supply at all of our gate and district regulator stations, enhanced operator qualification and training, more inspections of our customer regulators, AOC remediation. AOC stands for abnormal operating conditions. When we do our surveys and inspections, we see something that needs to be resolved. These new regulations are going to put an increased burden to get those remediations done in a quicker, more timely fashion, document them more as well. Increased leakage surveys, more rigorous abandonment, inactive services. If somebody stops taking gas, instead of giving them some time to maybe change their mind out and want us to disconnect that service at a short time. Tracking and traceability is just documenting everything that goes into the ground, categorizing that on the GIS system. And probably the highest impact for us is that all indoor meters need to be outside by the year 2046. And we have about 4,300 inside meters, so we have to average about 200 per year moving outside.
Yeah.
The good news is that is potentially a part of the future round of the physical plan. We cover some of that.
Hey, Mike. Okay, we got to start with Bob chairing the meeting, so. Okay,
Barry, the grant is pending. Have you heard anything on that?
right, see you in a few.
I have about 3 slides now. Let's touch on it a little bit. We waiting or?
Nope, well,
So the last thing I was going to say was, this is going to, it does hit us, but it hits all the Connecticut gas companies. So they're all going to have it reflected in their pricing at some point. Some regulations will hit them a little harder than us and vice versa. But this applies to Eversource and Outbound Grid, which is Connecticut Natural Gas, Southern Gas.
yes, Larry and his team have been working for the last couple of years with the Connecticut gas companies and Pura to kind of get these in a good place. They're not where we would like, but they're not where they started from either. So there's been a lot of negotiation to get it something that is workable and reasonable. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of record keeping that's been added. We've been involved with this for over a few years.
So are these things aimed at, safety and better efficiency
Safety.
and all of that sort of stuff, as opposed to sort of anti-gas?
There's nothing anti-gas. This is all gas safety.
Yeah, so what our state regulator's done is he basically pooled all the states to see what they have in their regulations. He took sort of what he thought was the best ideas from all the 50 other, 40 other states and what he thought were deficiencies in the federal code and enhanced based on those two pieces.
Do you have any idea, Barry, what this will cost? And is it embedded in that $3.3 million increase?
Yep, it was about 300,000 for year one, just to start getting a grip on some of these changes. So some of them are going to be we do in the first couple of years, then it kind of goes away. Others are longer term. When you do a backup supply at a station, that's a one-time cost with minor future costs. But by 2046, getting all the meters out, of course, that's 20 years. Some of them are one-time hits, others are ongoing.
Yeah. And between this and the gas bond or the gas grant, we are trying to bring in a new engineer to help manage all of this work.
On the capital side, the request is for 2.5 million. The drivers are what they, again, nothing really out of the ordinary. We still have our DENT program, which is a risk-based replacement program. And we support DPW on their paving. The one additional, which isn't sort of a recurring expense, is to replace our regulator station that we have here at the yard. It's something that we really need to do this year because North Main Street's cast iron replacement is going to be done in 2025 through the PHMSA grant. So this station kind of goes with that work. And what it does is it removes a cast iron pipe that runs parallel to the railroad tracks and under. Never anything ever happens to that pipe dealing with the railroad is monumental task. That's a picture of some of the infrastructure we have out here at that station. You can see there's some old piping that really isn't used anymore. The green, yellow, and the red piping is what we maintain. This station was set up 20 plus years ago. It's really supposed to be a temporary station. And, it doesn't meet modern requirements, so it's something really has to do. The cost is expected to be about $300,000.
Don't challenge 20 years ago's thinking, because that was me, Barry, so,
Well,
yeah. It's time to replace it.
The DPW support, Alan and Perry Ann, if you've read sort of the monthly meeting minutes, you'll see we've been working on that in 2024. What remains is about 18 service renewals. Public Works is going after some streets in the East Great Plains area, the Laurel Hill area, and the London Turnpike south of Route 82. Together, that's about 75 to 80 services that we have to renew. And there are also another 7 up on Browning Road. So we have a big year of just renewing services, getting them from the inside to the outside to support DPW. We also have a project with the Norwich Public Schools. And I have a slide after that's going to show a little bit more detail, but they're asking us to relocate a gas main, which is their property. And if you look at the map on the right, there's a big parcel, the thicker blue line. That's the Greenville School property as it exists today. And the red line that you see going to sort of the bottom left, that's a high pressure gas main. And we have that feeds basically this station here and downtown. They're going to be putting a stormwater detention facility about where that red line is shown. So that's a 1952 coated steel pipe that we're going to, instead of going through what we call a cross-country run, we're going to move it out into the street on Boswell Avenue and Hickory. If I could have a pointer, I would show it would just connect on the city street. So no more cross-country runs vulnerable to diggings. So that's 2,000 feet of new gas main. It'll require a bypass to keep the gas feed downstream of the tie-in point, and we'll give Greenville School new high pressure main service rather. And that costs about $200,000.
And Greenville and Stanton are the first 2 schools to be done. And so we're going to try to get this done in advance of their needs.
So Bill, getting here to the grant. So right now, we were awarded the fiscal 22 grant. That was $10 million. We've cleared a number of hurdles with that, and we actually have an approved project now, which we can start seeing reimbursement for. That email came about a week ago. So construction design plans are at about 90% complete. We have a set of plans that is like 40 pages long. The tier 2 environmental assessment we went through was determined to be a finding of no significant impact, or FONSI, as the feds call it. We're required to do a section 402 stormwater permit that has been submitted to DEEP. That's about a month to review. The Build America, Buy America, also known as BABA, compliance is proving to be a little bit of a challenge. We're working through it. A number of the parts and pieces that we buy are compliant. There are some, however, that aren't. And in the gas world, we don't really like to change the materials that we use. We train to specific materials. Our procedures are written to specific materials. So we are in contact and constant communication with PHMSA about how to resolve the issue. So that's sort of pending right now. And Chris just alluded to, we do need to identify project management for the grant. There is a lot to keep track of and manage through that process.
Barry, what triggered the FONSI, or is it always required that you do that?
Every year
For the grant,
No, we've never done it for any gas projects ever in the history of our company. So this is a new federal program and they're treating it like transmission, right? They don't understand small scale construction and roadways.
So who did that? Did you hire an engineering firm or consultant to do it? Fonzie?
The tier two, I answered.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, the section 402, we did hire that
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But as far as the tier two,
You did.
yeah, it was, taking pictures up and down all the streets. So you think about North Main Street, it's only about 100 meters up the river.
Yeah.
So that was always gonna trigger tier two of that. The historic nature we have in downtown Greenville and also up at the end of the Bay Area, that triggered it. We've got tribal impact nearby, that triggered. I mean, there's all kinds of things that trigger that tier two. And then, so the 23-24 grant, what PHMSA, if you recall, that grant was set up as 5 individual years, totaling $1 billion. So PHMSA combined the 23-24 grant into a single application. So we have applied for $10.9 billion to take care of the remaining cast iron gas mains that didn't make the cut in 22. And they're obligated to render a decision by 24, but they missed last time's mandated decision date. So we don't know if it's 2024. They're telling us they expect 20. And then, kind of looking out, 10-year strategic plan, the cast iron gas main replacements. That's obviously high on our list. It always falls high in our DIT program. Optimistic that entire project becomes grant funded. Upgrading and relocating some of our gas gate stations. 2 of our 5 are essentially brand new. That one at Oakland Heights and one at Salem Turnpike. But the one in Georgetown, which is right by Dixie Donuts, is certainly a vulnerability with flood. It's older technology. It needs to really be relocated and or abandoned and combined with our Yantry Gate Station, which is up on Barnside Lane, Snake Hill. And then that leaves our Mohegan Park Gate Station, which is right at the entrance to Mohegan Park, just below the secondary containment that's called skating pond.
Yeah.
So that one needs to be rebuilt as well. Again, long-term thinking here. And then what we talked about before, getting those inside gas meters outside. It's a big project. 4,300 of them in 22 years is about 200 a year.
Barry, did the residents pay anything with that regard to the taking the meters out from outside?
No,
It's
we
all-
wouldn't have a charge for that.
No.
Not specifically for that project.
Yeah. We never have, and we've always owned the infrastructure all the way into the house. So that's not like water where we never own that piece on the property line. Gas, yeah. Yeah.
There was a time when we had, they say wet gas, so it'd be moisture prone gas. And in the dead of the winter, that water could ice up regulators or meters and things wouldn't function well. So there was a concerted effort to purposely put them inside. We now don't have wet gas and we know that's not a very good idea in terms of risk.
Yes.
So a lot of what you've talked about is repair, replacement and modernization and so forth. Do we have any expansion plans? Do we have to expand gas service to anyone in the city or like, I know we had the bond a few years ago, which I assume is fully expended.
It's fully expended, but not fully paid for, but yes. But right now there's really no neighborhoods where it's cost effective to expand. If a big business comes in, for instance, Preston Riverwalk, we'll do an expansion. But or we will expand down to Aqua Industrial Center, but we don't have any neighborhoods we're going to be planning on heading into expand.
We pick up 40 or so customers on average per year, just for people who want gas where we already have a main.
Oh, sure.
So we're picking up a little bit.
And is that primarily or partially because of the topography and the geographic conditions in Norwich? I mean, there's so much rock and.
It's all economics. I mean, we have ledge, but it's all economics. Density, the dense neighborhoods have been served.
Yeah.
And you need the payback on some of these, if you don't have, almost a full participation is, 50 years or more. So that's not necessarily a good investment at this time.
And what percentage of the 4,300 is residential, would you say?
A great deal of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, like 80+% probably.
But it includes commercial.
It does.
And
Yes. You know, there's areas, you know, you talk about like North Main Street, Central Ave, where, you know, it's difficult to move those meters outside, but nonetheless, they have. And then lastly, just to reinforce the idea about the abandoning of the Norristown Gate Station. This is a picture of it a couple of weeks ago on January 10th. And if you look carefully at that picture, that's not just standing water, that's moving water. So that, the Antic River actually flowed through that gate station at Dixie Donuts. And the green piping on the left leads to the heater, 700-pound gas. So there's really an urgency to make some decisions about this station and get it out.
It's been there since the 40s.
Been on there a long time.
50s.
Yeah, so the pipe across the river was done in 60s, but I think the station was done before that. Yeah, I'm not actually.
That's when the pipeline came up on through, it was the 50s. We got 5 stations. There may be a little staggering of the stations, but
Right.
everything was post 50s.
Do you have any ideas where it would go?
So this station connects with the Yantic Gate Station up on Barnside. They're connected. We have to do some engineering confirmations, but we think that Yantic Station can carry the entire load. We can just basically abandon this and build a district regulator station, smaller type station, somewhere near Public Works.
Out of the floodplain.
Out of-
So the big, there are at least a couple big gas, I don't know what the right phrase is, stations, one up by in Cathville by the trailer park and another one over by the Dime Bank headquarters that I assume are Enbridge or somebody.
So the one in Trailer Park, talking about Oakland Heights.
Yeah.
That is a gate station owned partially by Enbridge, and we have a building as well. So
Okay,
there's a delineation point where we take ownership and maintenance responsibility. That's one of our modern ones.
yeah,
Then the Dime Bank and Stanley Turnpike are other newer one. Again, a 2-building setup. Enbridge takes gas, meters it, does their thing in their building, and there's a delineation point between the buildings, and we take it.
but I guess my question is this, those 2 Enbridge stations, or partial stations or whatever, that I believe they pay tax on.
Yes, they do.
There's the solar, 2 solar farms. At least one they pay tax on, the other one's in a dump. I don't know whether that's any tax payments that come out of that or not.
They would on the equipment.
Okay. I guess my question is, why don't we ever report that? I mean, it's not the same thing as our 10%. So you can't just add it. I agree with that, but it's additional tax revenue that NPU's operation is providing to the city. I mean, I would think that's,
We have in the past, and the bulletin and they have written about it, not in a while,
okay,
not every year, but it is significant.
yeah,
When you do them all together, I believe it was $4.5 to $5 million on top of 10%.
yeah.
So there should be, is a way for us to more accurately capture that, maybe as part of what we're doing, the budget process, and we're getting ready to send something to the city council, just to remind them
Yeah,
what's there above and beyond.
okay. Just a thought. And with that, I'll turn the chair over to Michael.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your help. Sorry I'm late. Work gets in the way of fun sometimes.
I'm glad you think our budget's fun, Mike, so. Because there are people in this room who don't think it's a fun process, so.
What's the numbers guy? No, I think that's an interesting comment by Bob, but I'm sure they're pretty well aware of that down in City Hall. And probably wouldn't want to give an inch. No harm in asking, right?
There may be administrators who are aware of it. I would bet the council is not.
Okay.
Mhm.
Like I say, no harm in asking.
Yeah.
So are we on to the budget presentations at this point?
We just finished the gas presentation, Mike, and we're on to electric operations. So electric is, Eric is the lead on this one.
Afternoon, everyone. So today, we're going to take a quick look at the electric department overall. And then we're going to take a look at our reliability numbers. Unfortunately, I don't have 2023 reliability numbers yet. They probably won't come out until next month. But we'll take another look at the numbers that I showed you guys last year. From there, we'll move on to the FY25 operating budget. and capital budget and end with our 10-year system. So, department overview, we are split into 3 areas. The first being electric distribution, that's primarily our line department. We have 13 employees there, including the general line foreman. Under electric transmission and generation, we have 6 employees, the electric maintenance manager and 5 substation mechanics that also dual hat as our as the folks that maintain our hydro units. They also still maintain the jet for as long as we're going to have it, but it did decommission in May of this year. We have 1 full-time engineer, and then the control room. The control room operates our electric system, and they monitor gas, water, and sewer.
Just quickly before I forget, are we selling the jet? Are we gonna be able to sell it? Are we gonna make money on it?
So that's in the plan, is to get that moving along. We'll probably get an RFP out, look at some brokers to help us move that along and see if there's any value.
Larry, one question I want to ask. So you have 7 servicemen or people in the doing
Field
services?
services?
Yeah, for field services.
Yes.
Is that enough?
To address the regulations that are coming, that's to be determined. So as of right now, it's okay, but to meet those, we might have to.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do 2 things. They do emergency response. So in the middle of the night, there's an odor of gas, they go. They also do regular maintenance work on our system, like meters and regulator type work. Not a lot of that, but there's some. And then they do service calls for customers who have issues with their appliances.
Do we get paid for those calls? Is it charged?
We charge for customer calls, as long as it's beyond safety. If somebody calls odor of gas in their house, no charge. But if we go and we have to fix a pilot, or replace a pilot or light or something,
So those personnel within electric are responsible for operating, maintaining 461 miles of overhead distribution, 73 miles of underground distribution, 3 electric substations, and 21,400 customers. In addition to that, we have the 1 gas turbine generator, which we are working on. It did decommission in May. We can't operate it anymore on the system, but we do have to maintain the unit until we can clear the unit off the site. And then we have the 3 hydroelectric plants, which includes the 2 dams and a 3/4 mile water canal. So looking at our reliability numbers, again, these are our numbers there all the way on the left are from 2022. The numbers to the right are our numbers from 2021 compared to the investor-owned utilities, our Source and United Illuminating, and the Connecticut Muni. So all of the other Connecticut municipal utilities provide the same data that we do into the American Public Power Association. And every year they produce a report that's 1 year time late. So that's why I don't have the data from last year yet, but last year's data will actually be 2022 information, not 2023. So it's always about a year behind of what we do. And that gives them the ability to compile all the data and produce the report. What we look at are 4 primary indicators: system average, interruption, duration index. What that looks at is how many minutes is a typical outage on our system. Safety looks at the system average interruption frequency index. What that says is, from a customer perspective, how often would they see an outage over the course of a year? So what these numbers show is that in 2022, our average customer experienced 1 outage a year. Katie looks at our response time. So for all outages across the entire system, how quickly can we respond and restore power? And then the average system availability index is the availability of our system over the year. So when we measure this, we are measuring it in, as you can see, hundredths of a percent. And that's because at the end of the day, when you're talking about a 24-hour day or 365 days a year, you're really worried about 99.98, 0.99 availability. Even dropping down to 99% would mean that the average customer, when they lose power, will be out for about a day and a half. So we like to measure our outages in minutes and hours, not necessarily As you can see overall, we compare pretty well to the IOUs and the munis here. Really,
Do any of those statistics take into consideration the scope of an outage? In other words, if 2 people lose power versus 10,000 people lose power, do we take that into consideration?
absolutely. So when you look at Sadie, it actually divides the amount of outages and the length of the outage by your customer. And that's how you get to the minutes. So you're really looking at how many minutes an average customer would experience on the system.
Okay.
We brag about these results in like a newspaper article.
We always, we present these once a year in the board.
You're only as good as your last one, and putting something like this out would guarantee a thunderstorm.
Yeah. It would be good compared to the other.
Yeah, and the reason it's important to understand what's behind the numbers, we're going to get a little more into that in a minute, is because these numbers can fluctuate drastically from year to year. As you can see, just NPU alone between 2021 and 2022, we see a fairly large shift in some of those numbers. And that's based on how many storms did we have in 2022 versus 2021, and things like that. So it is really important when you're looking at this data to understand the events and the things that drove it.
And regional weather impacts, because when so that's why you look nationwide, it's not as important as local, and Jewett City, Groton, Wallingford are better than even the Norwalks, right?
I think that's one of those things that is generally believed in the city. I mean, you talk to a lot of people and they all believe that we have superior general service and emergency service. So, I mean, I think it'd be great to report it as much as we can, but I think it's something most people believe. Even Joanne Filbert says our staff is great with the exception of, the commission and the leadership.
But when you look at the thousands of responses when we do a storm, and Chris catalogs these, it's a great response.
I look at it.
And if somebody says something a little negative, usually 3 people say a positive afterwards. And you can't say that when we talk about rates and everything else, even though we do have very competitive and great rates. But I think the storm is 99% positive.
The other thing we do every year when we get this data is we dive a little deeper into what's driving those numbers. More importantly, what that helps is inform us of where we need to make investments and upgrades and things like that. So when you look at this slide here, what this is saying is really looking at our 3 circuits with our worst performance. And there's a lot of things that go into that, whether it be an area that's heavily wooded, a lot of tree cover, areas with very, very high customer counts. So there's a lot of things behind that. And one layer down is where we look into that and how we're going to solve the problem. Circuit 622, this is this is the circuit that feeds our North Main Street substation today, which primarily feeds our Greenville and Tapley areas. That's a project that's currently underway. I've been reporting on it monthly through the board meetings. So that project is scheduled to complete at the end of this month. Circuit 522, this Circuit 522 feeds a lot of this, but when you dig into the data, the biggest offender in Circuit 522 is actually Scotland Road. You guys are familiar with Scotland Road, a lot of trees there, a lot of cover, and pretty much every storm we have, we end up with a tree that comes down somewhere on Scotland Road and takes out power. So we're going in this spring with a Hendrix tree circuit, with tree wire, I should say, which will be more robust to any trees that are coming down. Circuit 623, this we'll talk a little bit more when we get into the FY25 budget. This feeds Laurel Hill. Laurel Hill is one of our oldest circuits in town. It was constructed in the 1950s. It's 4.8 kV compared to 13.8 kV, which is what we build our system to today. So this is something we're looking at upgrading in FY25.
Can you explain what KV means?
That's kilovolts. So that's the voltage that we provide at a distribution level to our customers. So So 13,800 volts is our primary distribution voltage. And then we use that to send power through long distances through the city. And then when it gets to your house, we step it down to 120, 208 to feed into your house.
In the other term, you're saying you're improving the electrical wires up on Scotland Road, so if a branch hits them, they won't break as easily, is what you're saying.
Correct. There's two things that we look at when we upgrade these systems. Scotland Road is also 4.8 kV. So we will also be upgrading that to 13.8. By upgrading the voltage, the best benefit we get out of it is efficiency. It's far more efficient to deliver power at a higher voltage than it is lower voltage. That's why we step up to transmission. And I heard Bob talking earlier. You're talking about 115,000 volts, 400,000 volts. Again, much more efficient to deliver power at higher voltage across long distances.
So it cuts down on our cost to deliver the same electricity.
Exactly.
So as long as we're talking about that, where are we on the 34.5?
That's coming. That's coming.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. All right, so for, based on the data that we looked at, these are the reliability improvements we're looking at for FY25. Starting with replacing and upgrading our aging infrastructure, we're looking at upgrading our substation circuit breakers. We're going to be doing about 4 substation breakers a year. And we are also looking at the 10th Street substation bus overhaul. You guys are probably aware that we had a failure at 10th Street substation. We are still undergoing the repairs to that substation today. The next step in that is to look at the bus overall. The bus is where the power comes in and then gets distributed out to our customers. So if you imagine we have in the case of 10th Street, we have a single transmission line that comes into the substation, provides power to the bus, and then the bus takes that and distributes it out across 6 different distribution lines. So that bus is pretty critical to our operations. We'll be looking at overhauling that in this coming fiscal year. We also are looking to upgrade our power line carrier out of Bean Hill substation. Power line carrier is how we communicate from one substation to another. So at the transmission level, we, in order to make sure that if the transmission line comes down or we have some kind of disturbance on the system, that we can isolate that disturbance, requires that we be able to communicate to substations that we don't necessarily own. So in the case of Bean Hill, we communicate to Tunnel Substation and Montville Substation that are owned by Eversource. So Eversource has come to us and said that they are looking to upgrade their communication system on our end, which automatically drives the need for us to upgrade the communication system on our end. And then Circuit 623, which feeds Lower Hill, we just talked about. On the preventive maintenance side, tree trimming is always a critical point for us. We'll be continuing that in FY25. We have budgeted for 2 tree crews all year. Slight increase with tree trimming that we are going to have 2 crews full-time year-round. Today, in FY24 years previously, we had 2 tree crews in Norwich all the time, but that second tree crew pulled double duty for Public Works as well as us. This coming year, what we found was that wasn't enough to keep up. As you guys have seen with all the rain we've been experiencing over the last couple of years, growth throughout the entire city has really taken off. So in order to maintain our rights of way and keep our wires clear, it's going to take 2 crews full-time a year. And when Public Works requires tree trimming on their end, we'll bring a 3rd crew in. And that's primarily covered by Public Works.
What's the price tag on that? Is it still, it was around $1
I'll
million?
get to that in the next slide. Pole replacements, again, we do another big driver for us. We do a pole inspection every year. We inspect 10% of our 6,000 poles that we own throughout the city every year. Based on the poles, based on the inspection results, we will then go out and identify poles for replacement. Greenville dam maintenance is going to be a larger scope this year. That's really driven by the fact that we weren't able to get on it last year. So in August, due to the multiple high water events, the water never came down, which prevented us from gaining access to the dam. So we typically budget $100,000 for dam maintenance, and we've increased that this year, and I'll cover that in the coming slide to cover not just the scope that we would do on an annual basis, but also the scope that we would have done last year. And then we are preparing for future growth. So we're looking at performing a 10-year load forecast and planning study. This is hiring an engineering firm to come in, look at our system, look at what we are forecasting for load through electrification and other items coming down, what we need to do to our system to support that in the coming years. That plan is a 10-year plan that gets updated every 5 years. 34.5 ring bus, we have started design right now. We are in the initial design phase, and then we'll be using that initial design to go out to an RFP to hire a design firm to do the detailed design. Once the detailed design is complete, we put money in the budget next year to start construction, focusing on building the line between 10th Street and Bean Hill. And then the other thing we're looking at is upgrading the transmission line that feeds our 10th Street substation. So that line is 69 kV. That creates two challenges for us. First is Eversource you probably saw all of the construction that Eversource has been doing in the area. A lot of that's being driven by them upgrading the 69 kV bus at Tunnel Substation. And what that has left is we are now the only 69 kV customer coming out of Tunnel Substation. That has now created a single point of failure on their end, because instead of having two transformers like they normally would, we only have one. So if they have a transformer failure on their end, we lose the line that feeds our substation. So in order to combat that, we're going to upgrade to 115, where they've now invested all of their money to increase our reliability. This will also provide us increased capacity at our 10th Street substation to help us address the electrification that we know is coming.
So if we go to a 34.5 system over time, does that create redundancy in terms of substations? So that if one goes out, we have the capacity to.
Yes. So there's two in that 10-year plan, and what we've been driving to for years is two ways to back up our substation. 34.5 will become the primary means to back up a substation. So anytime we have to take a substation out, we'll be able to back up a single substation using 34.5. And then we are also moving towards a 1-for-1 circuit backup, so that each circuit that we have in the city is backed up by another circuit. So it gives us actually two different areas.
And where are we on financing the 34.5 system?
So once we get the final estimate, Bob, so we're not going to go out for bond. We may go through CMEC financing, and we are also looking at private financing. So this will come before we are bond rated.
So to put some numbers to the items we just talked about, FY25 O&M budget, we are looking at $5.2 million overall. The biggest driver of that is our distribution system maintenance. Again, going back to maintaining over 400 miles of overhead line, close to 100 miles of underground line. That is by far our biggest expense within our operating budget. Tree trimming being the biggest piece of that. So $700,000 is what we're going to be putting towards tree trimming next year. That cost is going to be higher than what we saw in FY24. That's not just driven by the full-time tree crew. That's actually a very minimal piece of that. The bigger driver is we're now incorporating flagging into that tree trimming contract, which will actually, you'll see an opposite decrease in our flagging expense overall. So a good portion of that 700,000 is actually costs that we're removing from elsewhere. All told, our maintenance of overhead lines and equipment is $1.3 million. For generation maintenance, again, Greenville Dam and canal maintenance being the biggest expense of that totals $366,000. Now that is an increase, but that's to make up for the money that we did not spend on that project this year. 2nd Street hydro generator cleaning and governor maintenance. This is a 5-year requirement that we have to make sure that the generators remain operational. And then regulatory compliance is another big driver of our costs there, primarily through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Those are the two primary agencies that oversee our dam maintenance and our generation operation. Transmission and substation maintenance, about $700,000 we'll be spending there. Bean Hill and 10th Street, in addition to the bus maintenance that I talked about earlier, we're also going to be doing transformer maintenance. We've got 2 transformers at 10th Street and 2 transformers at Bean Hill that we're going to be doing an overhaul on that's repainting the transformers to prevent weathering or damage to the weather. And cleaning the oil. The oil, we don't change out in a transformer like we would a car or anything else. That oil basically sits for the life of the transformer, but you do have to clean that oil over time. So this project will be cleaning that oil and adding probably another 20 to 30 years of life to those transformers. On the regulatory side of the house, the North American Electric Liability Corporation is the primary regulatory body for all transmission operations across the country and into parts of Canada. So we're going through an audit right now, but we're seeing an increase over time on the amount of regulations that they're imposing on us as a distribution provider. So for example, historically as a distribution provider, we were able to rely on Eversource as our transmission operator to provide us the protection within our substations. We're no longer able to do that. Starting this year, we're now required to independently verify everything that Eversource does on their end. Well, Eversource has a team of about 100 engineers to do that work. We have one. So that's a huge undertaking that we have on our part. Again, being driven by regulatory.
What's the motivation for that?
System protection. So NERC's primary responsibility is to maintain the operation of the transmission system. So all of their regulations are making sure that transmission system stays.
Physical, cyber, and protection through the relays.
Well, I mean, presumably that was being done by Eversource for this, no?
Well, so
Not our individual substations.
The maintenance would be done on end. What had historically been done by Eversource was the engineer. So the big change to that is we now have the requirement to perform the engineering that we used to rely on Eversource. Go ahead, Mike.
So you were talking a minute ago about cleaning the fluids in the transformers.
Yes.
So is that a problem at all with getting, do you have like mobile units that you go around and hook them up, basically bypass cleaning type thing, it cycles through?
Absolutely. So we don't own it. We have a contractor that does that for us, but they bring in a mobile unit that we park right at the transformer, and they just filter the oil out of the sump and can put it on a constant circle.
Oddly enough, I had some experience in the industry. I didn't actually work in it, but I was involved with a company that developed an electronic process for stringing together the little particles and getting those fluids much cleaner than conventional
Oh, no kidding.
filtration. And it's IsoPure Fluid Technologies, and they're actually in Stonington, Connecticut. And I don't know if it's cost effective to look into it or not, but it's IsoPure Fluid Technologies. And you might want to just, something else just to know about it.
Absolutely.
And they have units in it, Pfizer's and other places, some military installations and whatnot. Like I say, I don't know if the numbers would make a difference here, but it might be worth looking into. I think they don't do the service, so they just sell the equipment. So you would be the one that puts it on a pickup truck and goes around and hooks it up.
We do so infrequently, Mike. It's an outsourced job, but we could find, see if our vendors use their technology.
It may be possible that the vendor we use is using that.
Yeah, I've lost track of it. I haven't really talked to these people probably in 10 years. But myself and several other people got together and actually developed the technology. And then we got venture capital involved. We like to call it vulture capital. Basically, we got flushed out. Had nothing to do with it. But it was our own fault too, because it was really nobody's fault. We couldn't ratchet up the sales fast enough to, there was a formula that if we didn't, we would lose. And so what happened was they just sold it to this company in Stonington that was actually fabricating the equipment. But they liked it so much that they bought it for a relative pittance. They bought the technology and now that's all they do. They gave up manufacturing for other people just to manufacture, their own purification equipment. They've been doing it for a while. So I assume it's working.
Yeah, no, I'm curious, so I'll definitely look into it. Thank you. The last big driver of our operating budget is training. So, and again, in order to maintain our compliance, there's a lot of training that our staff have to go through. Additionally, we do have 4 apprentices within our line department. That's a 4-year apprentice school that they have to go through in order to become a fully qualified line worker. On the capital side, our capital budget for the coming year is $6.1 million. Recurring capital are the expenses that we spend every year, primarily driven by pole replacements, which we talked about. We inspect 10% of our poles, and then there's a percentage of that that we replace every year. Transformers is continuing, the cost of transformers is continuing to go up as transformers become more and more difficult to get throughout the industry. We're budgeting this year for $750,000. Now that covers all switches, regulators, all operating equipment that we put on our system. But the big driver of that cost is transformer, being about 90% of that $750,000. And then electric service installation, this is a good story. So we've seen our cost of within electric services go up. That's because we're installing more services. So anytime a customer comes in and asks to be connected to our system, that cost goes to our service installation. So the good news in that cost going up is we have more people coming in and connecting. For system upgrades, primary upgrades, where we talked about Laurel Hill at a cost of about $1 million. 34-5 construction, this is the line going between 10th Street and Bean Hill Substation. That's going to be about $2 million in the next fiscal year. 10th Street Substation bus overhaul for $200,000. And then the transmission line upgrade design is going to be about $1 million. Now that doesn't just cover the engineering design for the line itself, it also covers the environmental studies that are required to maintain that right of way, both in accessing the right of way and then making sure that we have enough space within that right of way to build, to actually reconstruct. Floodproofing design for Bean Hill Substation. We have received a $650,000 grant from the state of Connecticut to look at how we're going to floodproof Bean Hill Substation. We have a couple of different options that we're looking at that, but the $650,000 is going to help us determine that. Bean Hill Power Line Carrier we talked about, and then the hydro controls upgrade will be the last big system upgrade we're taking on. Those hydro controls are 1950s and 1960s vintage. So at this point, there's a lot better technology out there that will help these units run more efficiently. Finally, looking at our 10-year strategic plan, we are focused on 3 key areas. First is addressing increasing load, primarily through electrification and distributed generation. That is primarily the 34-5 ring bus. We've talked about that quite a bit. This is going to give us the ability to interconnect our substations and be able to more easily connect distributed generation as it comes onto the system. Addressing aging infrastructure, we have a very, very old electric system within the city of Norwich. So we are focused very hard in replacing and updating that infrastructure. That's going to reduce maintenance costs, reduce equipment failures while increasing reliability and system efficiency. As I said before, every time I upgrade a system voltage, it now becomes more efficient to deliver that power to our customers. Last is leveraging new technology. There's a lot of technology out there in electric distribution that we are looking to bring onto our system. The best example would be auto healing. So this is our goal to put us on the path towards an auto healing system, which has been around the industry for quite some time. The best example I can give is if a car hits a utility pole and takes out power to 500 customers, the system can automatically respond to that and reduce that outage
down to however you designed the grid. In the case of Eversource, they actually designed it to about 500 customers. So any outage they have on the system, they can automatically respond and reduce that outage down. We're also looking to improve cybersecurity, as we've talked about, and John from IT has talked about. This is a continuing battle as technology increases, so the risks. So this is something that we have to focus very heavily on. First and foremost, for the protection of our system and our customers, but also from a regulatory perspective. They watch this within the electric industry very, very closely. Any questions? That's all I have.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, I guess. Part of the electric process is generation.
Right.
And we have a couple of small projects that may or may not occur. And we're talking about potentially doing in conjunction with somebody, a solar farm on the end of Hollyhock Island. And CMAC is in the process of doing a utility scale battery project somewhere in Norwich. We're talking about doing it at least. But do we have any other thoughts about that? I mean, is that even a possibility of, I don't know, doing a small scale nuclear plant or any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so Bob, any generation project is a CMAC project.
Okay.
And we need to drive it through CMAC.
Yeah.
And if we're talking small scale nuclear, I think the second plant in the state of Connecticut is much better than the first plant because of the regulatory and environmentalists and all of the issues that are going to come with being first. The first one's going to cost significantly over budget. The second one may come in at budget.
And I wouldn't support that still the day after I'm off the commission.
There are lots of opportunities, for instance, with CMAC. We will get a battery storage project. It's just a matter of the exact location of when. Eric's been working with Mike Rawle on that. There are other opportunities for larger scale battery projects onto the grid, potentially in Norwich. We're keeping our eyes and partnering with anyone who is going to go through. But when you're going through that ISO approval process, that's a 2 to 3 year process just to get the permitting. And then is the project still feasible in the time frame when they get their permits? So everything we have on a grid scale is very far out, but we have a lot of people kicking tires.
I saw this guy speak. He's the general manager of it's a town near Worcester that has a big battery project or a lot of batteries, and they arbitrage the system and all that sort of. Is that still working?
I haven't, that general manager who's moved on.
Okay.
That was up in Princeton, I believe. Or it was right near Wachusett Mountain.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of them in Massachusetts. So what they're doing is they're offsetting transmission costs.
Yeah.
That's where the dollars are. That's where CMAC is looking for the value.
Yeah.
They do the same thing as the 50 and 5 or the microgen projects that are the diesel generators. And to go forward with a new project, it doesn't make sense to use diesel when you can use a battery and get the same result. So those projects work in the market today. The market's ever changing, so you got to evaluate every year to see if they still make sense. But there will be something from CMAC in Norwich in the next 2 years.
What kind of percentage are we talking about increase in both the gas and electric from last year? You know what the increase will be, percent increase?
Oh, you mean load?
Yeah, both.
So that's our biggest challenge is, right now with the electric industry, if you ask 3 different people that question, you get 3 different answers. So part of our goal in hiring somebody in to come look at this is the benefit of hiring an engineering firm is they have the larger perspective on what's happening, not just within Connecticut, but New England and the country at large. So the goal is they can use that data to help come up with us, give us a better idea of what.
We were expecting a 2 to 3% growth increase last year. We got 1%. And that was because cannabis, there's no cannabis being grown in the community yet, right? So we have one retailer that's no different than, a little convenience store, right? So we're not seeing that growth yet. Solar Seal was expected to be very large, and we're gonna get more, probably more than 3%. Because of that, also scaled down, went away. We're still waiting. That may, that's still being worked. It's not gone, but the growth isn't there. Now, when you look at gas, it's incremental growth, very small. Because we're talking, 40 customers is what we're getting along the existing pipelines. The big growth will be at the Preston River Walk if that moves forward.
And then the other big challenge to that though is if you remember when we were at the NEPA meeting, ISO New England spoke and said, oh, we're going to see 3 times load growth over the course of the next 20 years. Right. But the problem is, when you start planning for 3 times load growth now, you don't necessarily have the revenue to support that yet. So all of this is not just about how much load growth we're going to see, but it's about what incremental load growth we're going to see over time so that we can plan the system to make sure that we can actually support the revenue we receive.
Thank you. I guess there's no further questions. We're on item 4, review the budget schedule.
So we have our next meeting next week, which will be water and sewer. So Lara will be the main event for the water and sewer. And then we're going to be doing all of the administrative functions. So we'll have GIS, finance, customer service, IT. All those groups will be presenting what our large drivers are. And then we move forward with the March 6th. We're going to have the proposed budget to the board. And shortly after that, when we get the draft to the city, we have the city presentation and the board presentation, and then we look for a vote by the board in April or May. So it's pretty much the same schedule we always follow for the budget. And next week we'll have another group of the other group of the operations to provide and see their budget. We'll also forward these 2 presentations off to the entire board. So for those who didn't see the presentations, they'll be able to take a look at them at their leisure.
So is there anything else then, Chris, other than reviewing the schedule here?
No, but we did, Mike, at the beginning of the meeting, before we started Barry's presentation, we also talked that we're going to have the auditors here at our next board meeting to review their findings for the year, and it's all very positive.
So that the cannabis growing didn't happen, you were saying?
Cannabis is not, growers have been delayed. Numerous reasons. New business, it's difficult to get the capital moving, and also just the challenges of getting the electrical equipment. We pre-ordered the transformers, but they are still waiting for the switch gear and all the internal electric work to make that happen. So
I thought there was going to be more than one retail outlet, 2, or am I wrong?
there was a possibility of 2. Right now, there's only the one on West Town Street. Right now, there's 8th Street is still moving forward. I mean, West Main Street. Yeah, I'm sorry, not West Town, West Main. Yes.
How are they doing? Do you know?
Started off slow, but they're starting to pick up, but still below expectations.
I guess it's a good thing. We had the most sale of nips in the city.
In the States.
Really?
It's a shame there's not a better, there's not a city fund that gets that money.
Well, the Public Works gets it all. I think they got $140,000.
Oh, they get it for the return money? Huh? Yeah.
Well, that's what it should be.
And the recycling coordinator.
So I asked the mayor, the city manager, and the town and city engineer, what they're doing with that money, and I sent an email, never heard back from anyone. I don't know, but we sold over $1 million in the city in the last 2 years, I think.
Yep.
That's another claim to fame.
Mhm.
Well, I want to thank all the presenters for an excellent job. If anyone else has any other comments, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move we adjourn.
Okay. Thank you.
Right? And, yeah, thanks. And also, we have a few other members of our financial team, Brent and Terry, I think you see when we talk about gas supply, but heavily involved in the budget. Val Kent also heavily involved in the budget. And the internal work going into these budgets, you know, everybody's putting together the wishes and wants. Then we roll it up, we see what's missing, we see what we need to add, subtract, and then, you know, we all get to the final place. So, but it takes operations and finance to make this all work. We got a great team here.
But the bottom line numbers are coming out okay, right?
We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They will.
We always get there, Mike.
There's some money left over, right?
Always have money left over, yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
As long as we have enough.
Great.
We got all these covenants now that we've got to adhere to for each division, having enough liquidity.
Mhm.
We're gonna make all those ratios, I trust.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hmm.
I know you do